Breaking moments rarely arrive with warning. They don't knock politely or announce themselves in advance. They slip into the flow of ordinary time, and suddenly everything feels different, heavier, more uncertain. What just happened is one of those moments. Across continents and time zones, people are sensing the same thing at once, a shift. Not a single isolated event, not a rumor, not a passing headline, but a convergence of signals that together are shaking the entire world. In homes, offices, newsrooms, trading floors, and government buildings, screens are glowing with updates that seem to contradict yesterday's assumptions. The familiar sense of stability, already fragile after years of crises, pandemics, conflicts, and economic shocks, feels thinner than ever. People are asking the same question in different languages and accents. What does this mean for us, and what happens next? What makes this moment so powerful is not just one decision or one announcement, but the speed and scale at which information is moving. In today's hyper-connected world, news does not travel, it explodes. A development in one part of the globe instantly triggers reactions thousands of miles away. Markets respond in seconds. Social media fills with speculation, fear, anger, hope, and confusion all at once. Governments rush to issue statements that are carefully worded but closely analyzed for what they don't say as much as for what they do. At the center of the global shock is a realization that many people had quietly feared but hoped would never fully materialize. The systems we rely on are more interconnected and therefore more vulnerable than ever before. Political decisions ripple into economic consequences. Economic stress fuels social unrest. Technological breakthroughs bring opportunity but also uncertainty. When several of these forces collide at the same time, the effect is not linear, it is exponential. For ordinary people, the shock is deeply personal. A factory worker wonders if their job will still exist next year. A small business owner checks exchange rates and supply chains, trying to understand rising costs. A student questions whether the future they are preparing for will look anything like the one they were promised. Parents think about safety, stability, and whether the world their children are inheriting is becoming more dangerous or simply more unpredictable. In financial centers, analysts are rerunning models that suddenly feel outdated. Assumptions that held for decades are being challenged. Investors hate uncertainty, and uncertainty is now the dominant force in the room. Even those who thrive on volatility are acknowledging that this moment feels different. It's not just about numbers on a screen, it's about confidence, trust, and the collective belief that tomorrow will be somewhat understandable. When that belief cracks, markets feel it immediately. Political leaders, meanwhile, are walking a narrow line. Strong language can reassure citizens but escalate tensions. Silence can calm markets but fuel conspiracy theories. Every word is weighed, every gesture scrutinized. Allies are checking in with each other, sometimes publicly, sometimes behind closed doors. Rivals are watching closely, calculating risks and opportunities. History has shown that moments like this can lead either to cooperation or confrontation, and the path chosen in the coming days and weeks will matter more than many realize. Technology plays a unique role in amplifying the shock. Artificial intelligence, automation, and digital platforms have already transformed how societies function. Now, they are also transforming how crises unfold. Algorithms decide which stories millions of people see first. Deep analysis competes with emotional reactions. Facts and misinformation travel side by side, often indistinguishable at first glance. This creates a fog of uncertainty that makes it harder for people to know what to trust, even as they feel an urgent need to understand. Social media timelines reflect this chaos in real time. One moment there is panic, the next defiance, then humor, then anger, then exhaustion. The global conversation is loud, fragmented, and relentless. Yet, beneath the noise, a shared emotion is emerging, a sense that the world has crossed another invisible line. Even those who cannot fully articulate what changed feel that something important has shifted. Economically, the implications are potentially far-reaching. Supply chains that were already strained are being reassessed again. Energy markets react sharply to uncertainty, and energy affects everything from transportation to food prices. Inflation, which many hoped was finally stabilizing, is back in the conversation with renewed urgency. Governments face difficult choices: protect consumers at high fiscal cost, or allow markets to adjust and risk social backlash. Developing countries feel the shock differently, but no less intensely. They often have fewer buffers against global disruptions. Currency fluctuations hit harder. Access to financing becomes more difficult. Political stability, already fragile in some regions, can be tested quickly when economic pressure rises. The gap between nations with resources to absorb shocks and those without may widen further, raising moral and humanitarian questions that the world has struggled to answer before. At the same time, history reminds us that moments of global shock are not only about loss or danger. They can also be turning points. Many of the institutions, agreements, and innovations that define modern life were born out of crisis. The challenge is that change under pressure is unpredictable. It can lead to progress, but it can also deepen divisions if fear overrides cooperation. Culturally, the shock is reshaping how people see the future. Optimism has become more cautious, more conditional. The idea that progress is automatic or inevitable has been replaced by the recognition that it must be actively protected and guided. Younger generations, in particular, are growing up in a world where once-in-a-lifetime events seem to happen every few years. This shapes values, priorities, and expectations in ways that will influence politics, economics, and society for decades. In newsrooms, editors face a difficult task. They must inform without inflaming, explain without oversimplifying. The demand for instant updates clashes with the need for careful verification. Mistakes made in the early hours of a breaking global moment can linger for years, shaping public perception long after facts are clarified. Responsible journalism becomes both more important and more challenging at exactly the same time. Behind the scenes, experts from different fields are talking to each other more urgently than usual. Economists consult political scientists, technologists speak with ethicists, security analysts consider scenarios that seemed unlikely once. The world is too complex for single-discipline answers, and this moment makes that complexity impossible to ignore. There's also a psychological dimension that cannot be overlooked. Constant exposure to crisis-level news can lead to fatigue, anxiety, and a sense of helplessness. When people feel that events are too large and too fast for individual action to matter, disengagement becomes tempting. Yet history also shows that collective resilience often emerges precisely when people feel most tested. Communities find ways to support each other, to adapt, and to demand accountability from those in power. What makes this moment particularly unsettling is the lack of clear resolution. Some crises have obvious endpoints: a vote, a treaty, a market correction, the end of a conflict. This one feels more open-ended. It's less about a single outcome and more about a new phase, a period in which uncertainty itself becomes the defining feature of global life. Still, uncertainty does not mean inevitability. The choices made now by leaders, institutions, businesses, and individuals will shape how this shock is absorbed and what follows. Transparency can reduce fear. Cooperation can limit damage. Innovation, guided responsibly, can turn disruption into opportunity. None of these outcomes are guaranteed, but all of them are possible. As the world watches and waits, one thing is clear. This is not just another headline to scroll past. It is a reminder of how deeply connected we all are and how quickly the ground beneath us can shift. The shock is real. The questions are urgent, and the answers are still forming. What happens next will not be decided by one country or one group alone, but by a complex web of actions and reactions across the entire globe. In moments like this, history is not something written only in textbooks. It is something unfolding in real time, shaped by decisions large and small. The world is shaking, yes, but shaking can also mean awakening. Whether this moment becomes a story of fragmentation or of renewal depends on what comes after the shock and whether humanity chooses fear or foresight.